Tonight, we're going back in time, way back, far enough that toothbrushes don't exist, and people think leeches are a valid medical strategy. Welcome to the year 1347. It's early, it's cold, and you're very much alive, though that's arguably the worst part. Before we begin, take a moment. Dim your lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that low hum in the background. Settle into your soft, modern bed with your clean sheets and a mattress that doesn't contain hay or rodents. And breathe, because where you're about to wake up, you'll need the contrast. Your eyes open, not because you're rested, but because the church bell is slamming your skull from 2 villages away. It's your alarm clock, medieval edition. No snooze button, just guilt and noise. You're lying on something that can generously be called a mattress. It's a loose sack of straw stuffed inside old fabric, possibly burlap. It smells like wet barn and disappointment. The fleas are already awake and biting. You reach for a pillow, but there's only your arm, which is asleep from being your pillow all night. And it's damp. Everything is damp, including the wool blanket you share with 3 other people and, most likely, a goat. You're 28 years old, which in medieval terms means you're practically the village elder. Your back aches, your knees crack, and your spine sounds like it's grinding flour when you try to sit up. You share your one-room house with your entire family, a chicken, and some kind of beetle colony that moved in 2 winters ago. There are no walls, just space. No privacy, no ventilation. You don't own a window, just a hole in the wall stuffed with cloth. The floor is dirt. Yesterday, it was mud. Today, it's trying to become a mushroom farm. There's no getting ready in the morning. You're already wearing the clothes you slept in, because you only have one outfit. It's stiff, itchy, and smells like wood smoke mixed with medieval foot. It's freezing. You're inside, but your breath is visible. Your toes are numb. Your fingers don't work, and your nose has frost on it. The only source of heat is a tiny hearth in the middle of the room that went out during the night. Relighting it will require flint, effort, and hope, none of which you have at the moment. You glance around at your family. They're all still asleep, except for the baby, who's crying, and the pig, who just peed on your only pair of shoes. Outside, it's muddy. Inside, it's also muddy. Everything is slightly wet, and nothing is ever dry. You haven't even left bed, and you're already itchy, freezing, tired, and surrounded by farm animals. Which means, congratulations, you're ready to start your medieval day. Nature is calling, and it's not calling politely. It's medieval Europe, so your options are limited. Actually, they're non-existent. There is no toilet, no seat, no privacy, no plumbing, no hope. If you're lucky, you get a wooden bucket behind the house. It's cracked, already full, and leaking something that smells like betrayal. If you're unlucky, well, you walk to a ditch, or a bush, or just wherever the wind takes you. Toilet paper? Number most people wipe with straw, leaves, or rags that have been reused so many times they could probably vote in your local election. If you're fancy, maybe a scrap of wool. But most of the time, it's nothing. Just you. And your shame. And when you're done, what do you do with it? You throw it. Out the window, into the street. You're supposed to yell "Gardez-le," which roughly translates to "heads up" in Old French. But no one moves fast enough to care. The street becomes a stream, not of water, of everything else. Human waste, animal waste, and some liquids that are better left unnamed. That means the path to church, to the well, to your neighbour's house, it's all part of the system. You're stepping over, through, and into centuries of disease. If you live in a town with public latrines, congratulations. Now you get to share. A long bench with a bunch of strangers. No walls, no partitions, no dignity. You nod, you squat, you pretend this is normal. You try not to breathe. Let's say you're one of the lucky few who lives in a castle. Surely that's better. Well, sort of. You have a garderobe. That's a small stone room built over a hole. You sit, do your business, and it drops directly into the moat. Convenient? Maybe. Safe? Absolutely not. Because attackers have been known to sneak into castles through the waste chute. So yes, someone could literally invade your home through the medieval version of your toilet. Oh, and in winter, that seat is frozen. You're doing your business on what might as well be a block of ice. At 5 a.m., while listening to livestock snoring beside you. And don't forget, there's no soap, no antibacterial, anything, no sink, no towel. You wipe with whatever's handy and hope the plague skips your street this week. You're not just dirty, you're fermenting. And everyone around you is too. You've survived the morning toilet ritual. You're not clean. You're not refreshed. But you are technically lighter. And that's the best it's going to get today. Now that your business is behind you, quite literally, it's time for breakfast. You're hungry. You would love something hot, something comforting. Maybe coffee, eggs, toast. Instead, you get a wooden bowl filled with beige sadness. Welcome to pottage. Pottage is a thick stew, made of grains, root vegetables, and whatever else was lying around. It's been cooking for days, not as a recipe, more like a biological experiment. New stuff just gets dumped into the pot on top of whatever's left. You're not sure what's in it today. It could be cabbage. It could be a turnip that died badly. There's something chewy in it. You hope it's bread. You don't ask. On the side, you get a chunk of bread. It's not fresh. It's not soft. It could legally qualify as a blunt weapon. Made from barley or rye, maybe even mixed with sawdust or acorns if times are rough. Spoiler: times are always rough. You don't slice this bread. You negotiate with it. You bite, and it bites back. And what are you drinking with this meal? Beer. Yes, beer. At sunrise. Why? Because the water might kill you. The local stream looks clean until you realize it's also the local sewer, laundry station, and livestock bath. Drinking it raw is a death wish. So you drink small beer. Weak alcohol, brewed just enough to kill the germs. You don't get drunk. You just get less dead. Even the kids drink it. It's the most responsible option available. There's no coffee, no tea, no fruit juice, no glass. You drink out of a shared wooden cup that hasn't been cleaned since last season. It smells like regret and mildew. You sip carefully and try not to think about whose lips were on it last. And don't even think about meat. You don't get meat. That's for feast days, holy days, rich people. You're eating what everyone else eats every day. Porridge, pottage, stale bread, maybe an onion if it hasn't sprouted. Fresh fruit? Rare. Spices? Not in your tax bracket. Salt? Maybe, if the Lord hasn't locked it up in a box somewhere. You chew, you swallow. You try not to cry. Your stomach isn't satisfied, but it's not completely empty. That counts as success. This isn't the kind of breakfast that powers you through the day. It's the kind of breakfast that silently dares you to survive it. But you eat anyway, because that's all there is. And if you don't eat now, you'll be too weak to work. And if you can't work, well, that's someone else's breakfast tomorrow. Now that you've had your medieval breakfast, if you can call it that, it's time to get dressed. Not that it'll help, because you already slept in your clothes, and you're going to work in them, and you'll die in them. Your wardrobe consists of exactly one outfit. A rough wool tunic if you're lucky. A coarse linen shift if you're not. It's heavy, itchy, and smells like old smoke and livestock, which is accurate. There's no fashion. There's just function. And the function is survival. You put it on if it ever came off. There are no seasonal collections, no color choices, no spare socks. This is what you wear until it disintegrates or fuses with your skin. You try to adjust it, but the collar is stiff. The seams are uneven, and something sharp is poking you in the ribs. You suspect it's a pine needle from last winter. You let it stay. Underwear is optional, meaning most people don't have any. If you're wealthy, you might own a linen undertunic. If you're poor, it's all raw wool, all the time. Scratchy, damp, eternal. As for shoes, if you have them, they're made of untreated leather, thin, flimsy, about as protective as a wet paper towel. No soles, no laces. You slide them on, and they sigh in defeat. They've been through things. So have your feet. Most people just go barefoot. Through mud. Through manure. Through medieval landmines, sharp rocks, disease puddles, and the occasional goat-related surprise. Laundry is not a routine, it's an ordeal. If you want clean clothes, you'll need to haul water from the stream. Boil it over a fire, scrub your tunic with ashes and hope the lice are too confused to return. Then hang it to dry in the sun, which shows up roughly 3 times a year. Most people don't bother. Why would they? They'll just be filthy again by sundown. Your clothes are stiff, crusted with sweat, smoke, mud, and guilt. They creak when you move. You try not to move. You give yourself a quick scratch behind the knee. Fleas, or lice, or both. You're never sure. You're basically a portable insect habitat. Everyone is. Men, women, children, monks. Doesn't matter. You itch. They itch. The whole village scratches together. It's a community event. Your scalp is crawling. Your arms have bite marks. And your neck is red from rubbing against the same scratchy collar for months. You consider changing into something clean. Then you laugh. And the laughter sounds like defeat. You're dressed, if that's the word for it. And now you're ready to step outside and do something you'll regret, like surviving another day. You're dressed. You've eaten. You're not proud of either. And now it's time to face your reflection. If you had one. There are no mirrors in your home. At best, you have a piece of polished metal. It reflects just enough for you to know that things are not good. Let's talk hygiene, or the medieval version of it, which is mostly superstition and wishful thinking. Bathing isn't a daily habit. It's an event. It requires firewood, a tub, heated water, and time, which means it happens about as often as solar eclipses. When you do bathe, it's not in private. It's in a shared tub with reused water. Your whole family takes turns, oldest to youngest. By the time it's your turn, it's less of a bath and more of a broth. Soap exists, but barely. It's made from animal fat and ash. It smells like sadness and bacon grease. You rub it on. It burns a little. You pretend that means it's working. There is no shampoo, no conditioner, just hair. Long, tangled, greasy hair, crawling with life. Fleas are expected. Lice are constant. Bedbugs, standard. You've scratched so much your skin has developed texture, historical texture. As for deodorant, there isn't any. People smell. All the time. You smell. Your neighbors smell. The church smells. Even the animals are offended. Body odor is just part of the background, like fog or oppression. You may rinse your face in cold water. If the bucket isn't frozen, you splash it once, feel slightly worse, and move on. Now, let's talk teeth. You don't brush them, because that's not a thing. Maybe you chew a twig. Maybe you rub your gums with cloth. But mostly, you just let your mouth do its thing, which is rot. Toothpaste doesn't exist. Mouthwash is a myth. And flossing is something future generations will argue about online. Your breath is dangerous. Your gums bleed. Your teeth wobble. And you've definitely swallowed one in your sleep before. Tooth pain is common. Tooth solutions are not. If a tooth needs to come out, a local barber will yank it with pliers. There's no anesthesia, just someone holding you down. And lots of screaming. To be clear, this is normal. Everyone you know has bad teeth. Everyone you know is in some stage of dental despair. Smiling is not encouraged. Not because you're sad, though you probably are, but because there's nothing good happening in your mouth. If you lose enough teeth, you just start gumming your pottage. It's soft anyway, and it all tastes the same, which is not great. You step away from your reflection, or the wall you've been staring at. You feel sticky, itchy, sore, and slightly cursed. Hygiene isn't about cleanliness, it's about survival. And today, somehow, you've survived the ritual. You're disgusting, but so is everyone else. Time to start your day. Housing and living conditions. You step outside, mostly to escape the smell, but also to stretch your legs, which immediately regret being stretched. Your home is behind you, technically, though calling it a home is generous. It's more like a damp wooden box with smoke damage and feelings of abandonment. It's one room, for everything. Sleeping, eating, praying, arguing, giving birth, all in one drafty, mouldy rectangle. The walls are wattle and daub. That's sticks covered in mud and straw. It holds together surprisingly well, assuming it doesn't rain. Spoiler? It always rains. The roof leaks, the walls creak. The floor is made of dirt that's starting to believe it's a soup. There are no windows, just holes with cloth. Glass is a luxury, reserved for churches and nobility. You've never seen a real window. You assume they're magical. There's a hearth in the center. It's supposed to heat the house. Mostly, it just fills the room with smoke and regret. In winter, it's freezing. In summer, it's an oven. There's no insulation, no airflow, and no mercy. You sleep with your family. Your actual family, parents, siblings, kids, all in one pile. And also with your unofficial family. Fleas, lice, rodents, and occasionally a very confused chicken. The furniture is minimal. A couple of wooden stools, a rough table, a chest with nothing valuable in it. The bed is a shared straw mattress. It used to be soft. That was 3 harvests ago. Now it's flat, itchy, and home to 1,000-legged things. You've accepted it. Every surface is coated in smoke residue, from cooking, from heating, from the general idea of fire that never fully leaves. There's no paint, no wallpaper, no decoration, just dark stained wood and dirt-streaked walls. If you live in a town, your situation is slightly better. You have neighbors, which means more people to share disease with, and more noise. Townhouses are cramped, stacked on top of each other, narrow streets, open sewers, no privacy. You hear everything. You smell even more. If you live in the countryside, it's quieter, but colder, and more isolated. When something breaks, you fix it. When something dies, you bury it. When something leaks, you just let it happen and pray it stops. There's no plumbing, no heating, no electricity, just fire, buckets, cloth, and hope. Your home is a structure. It keeps the rain mostly out. It traps heat in sometimes. It contains your family, your livestock, and your dignity, barely. But it's yours. You built it. Or your father did. Or the Lord owns it and lets you live in it for now. Rent is paid in labor, crops, or silence. You glance up at the roof. You wonder if it'll survive another storm. Probably not, but neither will you. So you step back inside, brush a spider off your shoulder and carry on. Because this is medieval life. And it doesn't get better, just wetter. Labor and daily work. You've eaten, you're dressed, you're somewhat conscious, which means it's time to work. Because if you're not working, you're probably dying, or you're dead and just haven't noticed yet. Your job isn't optional, it's your identity, your survival, your rent, and your obligation to whoever owns the land you stand on. If you're a peasant, and you are, you work the land. Your land? Number the Lord's land. You just borrow it in exchange for your body. You start at sunrise. You stop at sunset. There are no weekends. There is no retirement. There is only now. And dirt. You hoe the soil. You plant seed. You pray for rain, then curse it when it doesn't stop. Your knees ache. Your back is shredded. You're 28 and feel 70. But nobody lives long enough to compare. The tools are basic. A wooden plough, if you're lucky. A rusty scythe, a heavy rake, and your hands. Gloves? Number safety gear? Never heard of it. You bleed. You bandage it with cloth, if you can spare any. If not, you just keep bleeding. You're hungry. Still. Always. But you keep going. Because stopping means falling behind. And falling behind means you eat less next week. Or not at all. If you're a woman, congratulations. You work twice as much. You help in the fields, then do everything at home. Cooking, hauling water, weaving, cleaning, childbirth, raising children, burying children. Repeat. Children aren't spared either. If you can walk, you can work. You scare crows, fetch water, tend animals, do whatever the adults don't want to. It's called building character. There are no clocks, no breaks. You work until the task is done or until you can't feel your hands, whichever comes first. Maybe you're not a farmer. Maybe you're a tradesman, a blacksmith, a cobbler, a tanner. You still suffer, just in a slightly more specific way. The blacksmith inhales soot. The tanner works with rotting flesh. The cobbler stares at feet all day. No one wins. If you're a servant, your job is to pretend the people above you are smarter, cleaner, and more important. They're not. They just smell slightly better. If you're a monk or a nun, your labor is prayer, copying texts, and avoiding eye contact with anyone talking about the plague. Which is everyone. Always. There is no ambition, no promotion. You do what your father did, and your grandfather, and the person before him. You are your work, and your work is survival. Your hands are cracked. Your nails are black. You can't remember the last time your muscles didn't hurt. But there's more to do. Always more. You take a breath, wipe your brow, smear dirt across your face, and move on to the next task. Because in the Middle Ages, rest is suspicious, and laziness is deadly. Now pick up your tools. The sun is still up, and you are not done. After a long day of work, you're starving. Again, still, always. So, you head home for dinner, or what medieval Europe called dinner, which was mostly hot disappointment in a bowl. There's no fridge, no stove, no pantry filled with options. Just whatever hasn't rotted, gone mouldy, or been stolen by rats. Cooking means fire, real fire. No knobs, no settings. Just flames, wood, and your best guess. Too hot. Your meal burns. Not hot enough? It gives you dysentery. You use a heavy iron pot that's older than you. You hang it over the hearth, stir it with a stick, and pray. Because cooking is an act of faith, not skill. The main ingredient, pottage, again. Because you don't have recipes. You have whatever's still edible. You toss in grains, maybe a few root vegetables, and a scrap of meat if you got lucky this week. And by meat, we mean something chewy and suspicious. Stringy squirrel? A bird that fell off a cart? No one asks. Preserving food is a full-time job. You salt it, dry it, smoke it, or bury it in cool earth and hope nature takes the hint. If you mess it up, you die of food poisoning. If you don't have enough salt, you just rot along with the meat. Fruits and vegetables are seasonal, which means when they're gone, they're gone. No imports. No frozen peas in July. You either eat what grows now, or you wait 8 months and hope you're still alive. Bread goes stale in a day. Cheese hardens into a brick. Milk turns into something unrecognizable and morally questionable. You drink it anyway. Spoilage isn't an occasional problem. It's a constant threat. Your senses are trained to detect not quite deadly levels of mold. You scrape it off and keep going. Because wasting food isn't an option. Sometimes you ferment food. Not on purpose. Just because the air is warm and your shelf is tilted. If you're lucky, your family has access to a smokehouse. That means dried meat, smoky flavor, and a slightly lower chance of dying in your sleep. If not, you dig a hole and store food in a clay pot underground. This is not secure. Animals will find it. So will your neighbor. And they're probably hungrier than you. You eat with a wooden spoon. You don't own a fork. Forks exist, but they're fancy. Too fancy for you. You hold your bowl in one hand and your shame in the other. There's no variety. There's no flavor. Spices are for royalty. Even salt is expensive. If your food tastes like anything other than warm, you're probably hallucinating. You finish your meal. You're not full, but you're not starving, which means dinner was a success. You put the pot back on the hook. No cleaning. The crust on the sides will add flavor tomorrow. Maybe. And you sit by the fire, belly humming, hands blistered, eyelids heavy. One more meal survived, which means one more day won. You don't feel well, that's normal. No one feels well. Your head aches. Your stomach turns. Your skin is doing something it probably shouldn't. Congratulations. You're sick. And now it's time to deal with the medieval medicine. First, forget everything you know about healthcare. There are no hospitals. There are no doctors. At least not the kind that help. There is no hygiene. No germ theory. No anesthesia. What you do have is options, terrible ones. Option 1, the village healer. She uses herbs, prayers, and trial and error. Mostly error. She'll boil some weeds, smear lard on your face, and tell you the fever is punishment for stealing bread last Lent. Option 2, the barber surgeon. He cuts hair and limbs, sometimes both at once. His tools are metal, unclean, and proudly displayed like trophies. He'll yank your tooth, drain your blood, and suggest you chew mint for the pain, all without washing his hands, because hand washing isn't invented yet. Option 3, the church. They'll tell you to confess. Your illness is probably the result of sin. Have you had impure thoughts? Have you skipped Mass? Touched a toad on a Sunday? If so, your illness is spiritual. Pray harder, fast. Flagellate if necessary. If it gets worse, it's probably the devil. If it gets better, it's God. If you die, it's still God. Most treatment is based on humours. The body is made of 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If they're out of balance, you get sick. Balance is restored by bleeding, vomiting, or being made to sweat profusely under a heavy cloak. In other words, treatment involves removing things from your body until you either get better or stop being a problem. Surgery is brutal. There are no painkillers, no antiseptics, just straps, hot knives, and muffled screaming. Amputation is done with a saw. They move fast, not for your comfort, just to get to the next patient. Broken bones? Good luck. They'll splint it with wood and cloth. Say a prayer and hope it heals mostly straight. If not, you limp. For life. Plague, everyone's favourite. Nobody knows what causes it. So they blame air, cats, witches, or Jews. Treatment involves burning herbs, wearing beak masks, or simply running away and hoping it doesn't follow. It always follows. If you're wealthy, you have slightly better odds. You get a personal physician. He reads astrology charts before diagnosing you. He recommends ground pearls and powdered unicorn horn, which is impressive, considering unicorns don't exist. If you're poor, and you are, you get what the village can give. Old remedies, strange rituals, a lot of guesswork, and occasionally a priest with a shovel. Recovery is rare. Infection is common. Death is constant. You get used to it. You lie in bed, wrapped in scratchy blankets, hoping the fever breaks. Or that you do. If you survive, you thank God. If you don't, someone else will take your shoes. This is medicine, not science. Just medieval hope and medieval tools. You cough, groan, and roll over. You'll either wake up tomorrow, or you don't. You wake up again, which means the fever didn't win. Not yet. So it's time to thank God. Because in the Middle Ages, religion isn't just a part of life. It is life. everything you do, from how you sleep, to what you eat, to when you die, is wrapped in religion. The church owns the calendar, the rhythm of your day, and your afterlife. The church bell rings constantly. It tells you when to wake, when to work, when to pray, and when to stop pretending you're busy. It's the original notification system. Loud, persistent, and impossible to mute. Mass is mandatory. Even if you're sick, even if you're dying, you show up, kneel on cold stone, and try to stay awake. Through an hour of Latin you don't understand. The Bible exists, but not for you. It's written in Latin, hand-copied by monks, and chained to the altar. Literally, shh. Reading the Word of God is considered dangerous. Best leave that to the professionals. Your priest is your spiritual guide, your local authority, and possibly your landlord. He tells you what's holy, what's sinful, and what fine you owe for swearing near a goat. There are rules for everything. What you wear, what you eat, when you fast, when you feast. Which days are holy, and which ones are holier. There are so many saints, you're not even sure who's in charge anymore. But someone's always watching. Confession is your emotional release. You list your sins in a dark box. The priest listens, nods, and assigns penance. Usually prayers. Sometimes walking barefoot through town. Or not eating for a week. Or worse, silence. You don't question the church. That's heresy. And heresy gets you tortured. Or burned. Or both, depending on who's available. The church decides who gets married, who gets buried, who gets forgiven, and who gets excommunicated. A fancy word for don't talk to this guy or help him, ever. Even illness is religious. If you're sick, you've sinned. If your cow dies, it's divine punishment. If your crop fails, maybe the village isn't praying hard enough. Witchcraft is real, according to the church. So is demonic possession, curses, and spiritual warfare. If something bad happens and no one understands why, blame the nearest old woman. Then light a fire. Pilgrimages are encouraged. Walk hundreds of miles to see a holy toenail in a glass case. Touch it. Pray to it. Buy a relic if you can afford one. Most of them are fake. But belief is real. The church is powerful. Rich. Feared and everywhere. Its word is a law. Its buildings are the biggest. Its reach is eternal. You don't worship casually. You worship constantly. Out of fear, out of tradition, and because you want to go to heaven, which sounds better than waking up here again tomorrow. So you bow your head, you fold your hands, and you whisper a prayer. Because in medieval Europe, there are no atheists, just people who haven't been caught yet. If you're a woman in medieval Europe, first of all, I'm sorry. Your life is already hard. Now take everything we've described so far and double it. From the moment you're born, your job is clear. Survive long enough to marry. Then survive that too. Your property. Your leverage. You're a future womb. Marriage isn't about love. It's about land, status, dowries, trade deals. You might be promised to someone by age 10, married by 13, pregnant by 14. Your body isn't yours. Your choices aren't yours. Your life belongs to your father, until it belongs to your husband. You run the home, which sounds relaxing, until you realize that includes cooking, cleaning, spinning, weaving, milking, feeding, child rearing, animal care, laundry, and occasionally defending the house when your husband is off dying in a war. And even then, none of that counts as real work. Not in the records, not in the taxes, not in the church. If you give birth, and you will many times, you do it at home, on the floor, with other women helping. No doctors, no sanitation, no anesthesia, and no guarantee you'll survive. Childbirth is a gamble. Each time might be the last. And if the baby lives, you do it again next year. If your child dies, and many do, you grieve quietly. Because there's no time, no therapy, and no space to fall apart. You just keep going. There's no education, no reading unless you're rich and cloistered in a convent. No political voice, no legal standing. You can't vote, sue, or own much of anything. Your word in court? Worth half a man's? Maybe. If you're widowed, you might get some freedom. But only if you're old, childless, and somehow still alive. If you speak too loudly, you're difficult. If you dress too plainly, you're suspicious. If you know herbs or help deliver babies, you're probably a witch. And witches get drowned, or burned, or pressed with rocks until they confess to crimes like flying, dancing, or owning a cat. Your role is silence, support, obedience. If you're lucky, your husband is kind. If you're not, no one will stop him. Marital violence isn't frowned upon, it's expected. And if you're a woman of status, you have servants, you live in a drafty stone room instead of a muddy hut. You get to wear 10 layers of stiff fabric and marry someone who wants your father's title. Either way, you exist in the margins. Everything you do is behind the scenes. Unrecorded, unacknowledged. But the world runs because of you. The food, the fire, the children, the fabric, the rhythm of the day. All of it depends on you. And somehow you hold it together. Even without rest, without credit, without freedom. You end your day by the fire, mending clothes by candlelight, listening to the baby cry while your husband snores beside you. You don't complain. Not because you're not angry, but because no one would listen. You close your eyes, and tomorrow it begins again. Life in medieval Europe is hard. But just in case it wasn't hard enough, there's also violence. Lots of it. Everywhere. All the time. There are no police, no investigators, no forensics. Just someone yelling, "He did it!" And the rest of the village agreeing because that's easier. Disputes are settled with fists, sticks, or sharp farming tools. Domestic violence isn't illegal. It's tradition. If you're poor, you fight with your neighbors. If you're rich, you hire someone to do it for you. Either way, someone bleeds. Justice is local and subjective and terrifying. There are courts, but they're not what you think. The law decides guilt, or the church does. Evidence? Optional. Witnesses? Maybe. Fairness? Absolutely not. If you're accused of something serious, like theft, blasphemy, or looking suspicious, prepare for trial by ordeal. That's when God decides your fate. There's trial by hot iron. You carry a red-hot metal bar a few paces, then wait 3 days. If your hand is infected, you're guilty. If it isn't, you're innocent, assuming you survive. There's trial by water. They tie you up and toss you into a river. If you float, you're a witch. If you sink, you're innocent, also dead. There's trial by combat. You fight your accuser. Whoever wins is telling the truth. Yes, really. Truth equals victory, which explains a lot about medieval politics. Punishments are harsh and public. Stocks, whipping, branding, mutilation, hanging, beheading, burning, all done in the town square like some kind of nightmare community theatre. And people watch. Everyone. Parents bring their kids. Vendors sell snacks. It's not just punishment, it's entertainment. Steal a loaf of bread. Lose a hand. Speak against the church. Lose your life. Annoy the local lord. Lose everything. Prisons exist, but they're mostly holding cells. Dark, wet, rat-infested holes in the ground. You're not sent there to serve time. You're sent there to wait. For trial. For punishment. For death. If you're a woman, the rules are even worse. Accusations are easier. Defending yourself is harder. And your punishment is often decided before you even speak. If you're a noble, you get better odds. You might get house arrest, or exile, or a clean execution with a sharp sword. If you're not, you get whatever's cheap and messy. Law is fluid, punishment is spectacle, and mercy is rare, so you keep your head down. Literally. You avoid eye contact. You don't speak out of turn. You don't look too rich or too poor, too loud or too quiet, too clean or too filthy, because anything can be suspicious. And suspicion is dangerous. You walk past the gallows. There's someone hanging. There from yesterday. Nobody seems bothered, not even the birds. You keep walking. You've survived another day, without being accused of anything. That's as close to justice as it gets. If medieval life wasn't hard enough already, let's add the weather. Because the sky hates you, and the earth agrees. There's no such thing as nice weather. There's just less bad, and actively trying to kill you. You lived during the Little Ice Age, a period of colder than usual temperatures across Europe. That means longer winters, shorter growing seasons, and more chances for nature to ruin your week. Your house has no insulation, no heat, no protection. So when it's cold outside, it's just as cold inside, maybe colder, because the wind finds ways in. In winter, your breath fogs up indoors, your hands are numb, your toes are purple, your water bucket freezes, and your food does too, in the pot, over the fire, while you're trying to eat it. Frost creeps across the walls, your bed is damp, you sleep in layers. So many layers, it feels like you're wearing a haystack. You still wake up freezing, sometimes with ice in your hair. In summer, it doesn't get much better. When it's hot, it's humid. And when it's humid, things rot. Your food, your clothes, your skin. Everything becomes sticky and smelly and slightly soft in the worst way. There are flies. So many flies. They live in your house. They sit on your food. They crawl on your face. They are a constant. Rain is either not enough or way too much. A drought means your crops die. Too much rain. Same result. Your fields flood. Your home floods. Your shoes never dry. Your hope does. Lightning hits churches. Winds tear off thatched roofs. And hail kills entire harvests in 10 minutes. You don't have forecasts, or warnings, or plans. Just clouds, guesses, and a lot of very anxious chickens. If your village is near a river, congratulations. You now live in a seasonal swamp. If it's on a hill, the wind tries to blow your house off it every night. There is no perfect place, only different ways to suffer. You rely on the weather to grow food. So when the weather fails, you do too. A cold spring means no planting. A wet summer means mold. A harsh winter means death. Yours or your livestock's. or both. When a year goes bad, everyone feels it. Food shortages, price spikes, desperation. You eat bark. You boil leather. You pretend roots are stew. And if it keeps going, people die. You blame God, or sin, or the nearby village. Anything to make sense of the sky's mood swings. People make charms, say prayers, try rituals to fix the weather. They don't work. But hope is hard to kill. You grow used to the cold, used to the wet, used to the never-ending dampness in your bones. And you stop expecting comfort. The sky never smiles at you. It spits, screams, sulks, or forgets you entirely. You walk through the mud. You shield your face from the wind. You don't complain. There's no one to listen. And anyway, tomorrow might be worse. So you pull your cloak tight, push through the rain, and keep walking. Because the storm doesn't care. And neither does history. Somehow, despite everything, the cold, the hunger, the filth, the fear, you still want fun. You want to enjoy life. Or at least survive it with some level of distraction. So, what did medieval people do for entertainment? Let's just say, they got creative. You don't have a phone. No books. No music streaming. No electricity. Your idea of screen time is staring out a window and watching a goat fight a bucket. If you're in a village, you make your own fun. Literally. You gather in the square. Someone brings a fiddle. Someone else brings questionable dancing. And suddenly it's a festival, even if no one remembers what for. Drinking? Constant. Ale, cider, weak beer. Not to party, but because water is poison. But yes, sometimes also to party. You play games. Dice, marbles, and anything involving hitting stuff with sticks. No rules, no uniforms. Just yelling and the occasional injury. Wrestling happens. So do foot races, climbing contests, and competitive complaining. Children play with sticks, and rocks, and other children. That's the toy selection. Storytelling is huge. You sit by the fire and listen to someone dramatically describe a fox outsmarting a chicken. Or a knight getting turned into a frog by a witch who lives in a boot. You've heard the same tales 1,000 times. You love them anyway. If a travelling performer shows up, it's a big deal. Jugglers, minstrels, mummers, actors in masks telling messy little morality plays. They dance, they sing, they vaguely terrify children. You clap, you cheer. It's the highlight of your month. If you live near a town, there might be a fair. Loud, dirty, chaotic, and magical. There's food, drink, puppets, pigs in costumes, and a guy who claims to swallow swords, but probably just swallows shame. Feast days are another chance to celebrate. There are over 100 of them a year. You don't get actual rest. You just work less and eat slightly better. The church says it's about saints. You say it's about escaping your routine and maybe sneaking extra bread. Music is simple and constant. People sing while working, walking, cooking, and hauling firewood. There are no concerts, just moments. Off-key, heartfelt, and louder than necessary. Dancing? It happens. In groups, in lines, in circles. Everyone knows the steps. You don't, but you fake it. No judgment. Everyone's barefoot and muddy anyway. Romance is rare, but flirting survives. A glance, a joke, a stolen apple. Marriage isn't romantic, but sometimes laughter sneaks in around the edges. If you're rich, fun looks different. Falconry, chess, hunting for sport instead of dinner, poetry, baths, still no toilets. But for most people, joy is simple. A warm fire, a shared joke, bread that's not moldy, a dry night, a dance that doesn't end in injury. You laugh when you can. You celebrate when the work stops. You carve your initials into wood and pretend it means something. Because fun doesn't need luxury. It just needs a moment. And someone to share it with. You've survived another day. Barely. But in medieval Europe, that's a temporary condition. Death isn't rare. It's routine. It happens at home, in the fields, in the streets, in your sleep, sometimes mid-sentence. People die young. You're lucky to reach 40. Many don't make it past 5. Disease is common. Treatment is guesswork. Accidents are final. And bad weather is just another killer with better branding. You don't have a will, you don't have savings. If you die, your tools are passed down. Your animals are claimed. Your clothes are reused. There is no funeral industry. Your family washes your body, wraps it in cloth. Sometimes not even that. The church oversees burial. You're laid to rest in a graveyard, if space allows. Marked with wood or a stone, unless no one can afford it. In that case, you're remembered with words. For a little while. There are no medical reports, no autopsies, no explanations. You die, they guess, and life moves on. If you're important, a noble, a priest, someone with influence, your burial is different. You get a tomb, a service, maybe a stained glass window. Your name gets written down. The rest of us disappear into the dirt. Your possessions, few and simple. A spoon, a cloak, a prayer. The church tells everyone what happens next. Heaven, hell, purgatory. People believe it because they need to. Otherwise, this life would feel even shorter. There are rituals, candles, prayers, masses for your soul. People light them in hopes you'll skip the bad parts, or at least move through purgatory a little faster. Sometimes they ring bells. Sometimes they just move on. Because there's work tomorrow. And more people will die soon. Children die often. Quietly. Quickly. Mothers grieve in silence. Fathers return to the fields. If a plague hits, there are no goodbyes. Just mass graves. Unmarked pits. The sound of carts and the silence after. But even in death, the system continues. You owed labor, your family takes over. You were behind on tithes, the church still remembers. You don't get to opt out of responsibility, not even when you're gone. And yet, you hope. You hope for something better. For your name to be remembered. For your children to speak it. For someone to light a candle once a year and whisper that you mattered. That's legacy in the medieval world. Not fame, not fortune, just memory, for as long as someone chooses to carry it. You lived, you worked, you endured. Maybe you sang. Maybe you danced once. Maybe you carved something into the side of a barn that's still there, waiting to be found. You won't leave behind books, or portraits, or statues, just stories. Spoken, faded, eventually forgotten. But for now, you lie still, the earth takes you, and the world continues. So maybe you're thinking, what if I wasn't a peasant? What if I was born rich? A noble, a lord. One of the fancy ones with a title and land. Good news, You're no longer starving. Bad news, everything else still kind of sucks. You live in a manor or castle, which sounds great, until you realize castles are just cold, echoey rocks with a drawbridge. Stone walls, stone floors, no glass, no warmth, just damp corridors and uninvited wildlife. There's no central heat. So you huddle by giant fireplaces that smoke like angry dragons. The walls sweat. The furniture molds. Your bed is a pile of itchy tapestries stuffed with straw and bad decisions. You have servants, which is nice, but they bring you food that's only slightly better than what peasants eat. Heavily salted, overcooked, covered in sauces to hide the taste of maybe it's going bad. Fresh vegetables? Rare. Clean water? Not guaranteed. Utensils? Still optional. You might eat with your hands, surrounded by people who haven't bathed since the Crusades. Your clothes are fine, literally, made of fine materials. Wool, linen, sometimes silk if you're showing off. But they're hot, heavy, and hard to move in. Fashion is just suffering that looks expensive. As a noble, you don't work the land. You manage it, which means collecting rents, enforcing rules, and occasionally punishing people for stealing wood from your forest. Your power is real and constantly resented. Your life is full of politics. Who you marry, who you offend, which side you support when your cousin decides to raise an army. Loyalty is transactional. Betrayal is expected. If you're a man, you're trained for war. Sword practice, horseback riding. Yelling things like "to arms!" in armor that weighs more than your horse. You don't fight often, but when you do, it's terrifying. An infection doesn't care if you have a title. If you're a noblewoman, your job is diplomacy by marriage. You're married off for land, alliances, or family reputation. You host, you smile. You manage the household and try not to get blamed for anything. Education? Maybe. If you're male? And lucky. You might learn Latin, philosophy, law, and scripture. But you're also expected to be violent, proud, and politically useful. So not much free time for poetry. You sleep indoors. You eat daily. You own land. But you're still surrounded by disease, bad medicine, cold winters, and angry peasants who'd love to see you fall off your horse. You're watched, gossiped about, tied to duties you didn't choose, expected to marry people you don't like, and defend land you've never walked on. And if your line fails, your title vanishes. Your estate gets split, and your memory ends up in the footnote of a monk's scroll. So yes, you have fancier shoes, but you're still walking through the same mud, just slightly taller. Even if you're rich, you're not in control. You have land, you have a title, but the world still makes no sense. Crops fail, people die. The weather turns, plagues arrive. And no one can explain why. Not science, not priests, not doctors. So, you look somewhere else. To signs, to omens, to the strange and unseen. Because in the medieval world, superstition fills the gaps left by everything else. You don't just believe in magic, you need it. The stars aren't just lights. They predict your future. If Mercury's in the wrong place, don't harvest. Don't travel. Don't get married. If a rooster crows 3 times at night, someone will die. If your candle flickers, something is watching you. If your dream involved teeth falling out, it's already too late. You carry charms, little bones, bits of cloth, words written by people who barely know how to spell. But they swear it works, and you don't have a better idea. You don't say certain names. You don't whistle after dark. You don't look too long at the moon. The line between religion and superstition is thin. Sometimes they're the same thing. You pray to saints, but also whisper to rivers. You go to mass, but still knock on wood, just in case. Witches are real, you're told. They curse cows. They ruin bread. They look like your neighbor's aunt. And they probably talk to cats. To protect yourself, you hang garlic. You mark your door with ash. You throw salt over your shoulder after you spill it, which you shouldn't have done in the first place. If your child gets sick, you don't ask what happened. You ask who did this. Someone must have cursed them, or given the evil eye, or walked past your window without blessing themselves. Magic isn't theatrical, it's local, ordinary, and everywhere. Midwives use herbs and mutter phrases under their breath. Blacksmiths recite short prayers before sharpening blades. Farmers bury coins in fields for luck. If something good happens, you thank God. If something strange happens, you check for signs. A bird flying the wrong way. A calf born with two heads. A strange chill in a warm room. You don't need logic. You need certainty. And superstition gives you that. Even nobles pay attention. Kings have court astrologers. Queens wear talismans sewn into their gowns. Entire wars pause because a priest says the sky looks wrong. Nobody is immune. Not the poor, not the powerful, not even the clergy. They just call it something else. It's not magic, it's divine protection. Same results, same fear. You check the fire, it's crackling too loud. You stare at the bread, it's split unevenly. You stop speaking. You don't tempt fate. Not tonight. Because sometimes you don't need a sword to feel threatened. You just need the wind to change. Or a dog to howl when no one else hears it. The world is mysterious. You don't need it explained. You need it respected. When nothing makes sense, you trust signs, symbols, and the look in a cow's eyes. Because in the medieval world, animals weren't just animals. They were messengers, threats, companions, and sometimes the only warmth in the house. You live with animals, not beside them, with them. The cow is in the yard. The chickens are under the table. The cat is somewhere in the rafters. And mice are everywhere. You don't have a barn. Not really. The animals sleep where it's warm. Same as you. You don't name them. Most of them won't live long enough for that. They're here to give milk, lay eggs, pull things, be eaten, and then be replaced. But still, you care. You brush the horse. You scold the goat. You pet the dog on the head when no one's looking. Dogs are everywhere. They guard the property, herd animals, bark at strangers, sometimes bite, sometimes catch rats, sometimes just exist, loyal, hungry, and slightly confused. Cats are a different story. Some people like them. Most don't trust them. They're quiet, sneaky, and associated with witches. Too many cats near a woman, and people start whispering. Pigs are useful. They eat anything. Including things they shouldn't. Including you if you're not careful. They're not cute. They're not pets. They're food with legs and teeth. Chickens. Always underfoot. Noisy. Nervous. Occasionally rebellious. You chase them more than you eat them. Cows are precious. Their milk keeps your family alive. They're slow, calm, and smarter than they look. Losing a cow is like losing a year of income. But the real animals that define your life? The ones you didn't invite. Rats, mice, lice, fleas. They live on your floor, in your clothes, on your skin. You don't try to get rid of them, you just try to manage them. Fleas bite. Lice itch. Rats steal grain. Mice chew everything. You stop noticing. You stop scratching. It's just part of existing. And yet, even these pests have meaning. A rat running out of your home might be seen as a sign. Mice chewing through a sack of grain. Bad luck. A flea bite that swells. Maybe a curse. Maybe the plague. Maybe both. Animals show up in dreams, in superstitions, in local legends. A black dog at night might mean death. A howling wolf could mean war. A crow staring too long? No one wants to talk about that. You butcher animals. You rely on them. But you also depend on them emotionally, more than you admit. The donkey doesn't talk back. The sheep doesn't judge you. The cat watches quietly while you cry near the fire, then curls beside you like it didn't see anything. You don't have therapy. You don't have privacy. Sometimes all you have is a warm animal that doesn't ask questions. And that's enough. And when the animals start acting strange, won't eat, won't sleep, won't go near the house, you know something's coming. Bad weather, bad luck, or something worse. Because when the animals leave, that's when you start looking toward the sky. And then, without warning, the worst does come. Someone doesn't wake up. Someone collapses in the field. Someone coughs and never stops. Death is never surprising, but it's never easy. It's part of life here. It visits often, quietly, quickly, without apology. There are no hospitals, no emergency calls, no clean sheets and soft lighting. You die where you live. In your bed, on the road, in the dirt. There's no doctor, just a neighbor who knows herbs, or a priest who mutters something over your body. Your family doesn't have time to mourn. There's food to cook, fields to till. A funeral to arrange, even if no one has shoes to wear to it. They wash you, wrap you. Sometimes they cry. Mostly they stay quiet. Because death comes often enough that there are no new words left. Burial happens fast. The weather decides when. The church decides where. If you were baptized, confessed, and didn't anger anyone too important, you get a place in the consecrated ground. If not, you don't. Graves are shallow. Markers are simple. Sometimes there's a stone. Usually there isn't. The memory lives in people, not things. And people forget. If you were noble, it's different. There's a ceremony, a procession, a stone slab with your name carved deep enough to outlast your story. But most of us, we fade quietly. No written records, no portraits. Just a name said softly for a few winters until the next baby is born, and the name becomes theirs instead. You might be buried with a cross, a token, something small to guide your soul. People say prayers, light a candle, hope that it helps, even if they're not sure how. The priest says you'll go to heaven, or purgatory, or somewhere in between. You're not sure. But you want to believe. Because if there's nothing after this, that's too much to think about. Legacy isn't wealth. It's not a statue. It's not a book. Legacy is a story someone tells about you once a year. A tool someone still uses because you fixed it well. A song your daughter hums when she's alone. Sometimes you leave behind a child. Sometimes just a field with straighter rows than the ones before. You hope that's enough, because it has to be. And as the earth takes you, life above it keeps moving. Someone mends a roof. Someone stirs a pot. Someone laughs too loudly and gets shooshed. And someone stares at your empty seat by the fire and doesn't say a word. Your name is remembered for a while, and then it's not. But that's how it works. Even kings disappear. Even saints are forgotten. The world keeps spinning. The fields keep growing. The sun rises without checking who's still around to see it. And maybe someday, someone will find your grave, or a piece of pottery with a mark you made, or a wall with your scratched initials. And for a moment, you're alive again. Just a flicker, a footnote, a shadow in someone else's memory. And that's something. In this world, that's everything. The sun is setting. The light fades fast. Candles are expensive, so you don't use many. Just enough to keep from tripping over the dog, or the child, or the firewood. Your day is done, not because you're finished, but because darkness says so. You sit by the hearth. The smoke curls upward. The warmth is uneven, but it's better than the wind outside. Dinner was hours ago. It wasn't much, but it was something. You're not full, but you're not starving. That's a win. You listen to the sounds of night settling in, the fire crackling, the chickens quieting down, someone coughing on the other side of the room. Your whole family sleeps in one space. You lay your blanket on straw, or a thin mattress if you're lucky. You lie beside your siblings, or your children, or both. There's no pillow, just a bundled up cloak. You pull it under your neck and try not to notice the dampness. The air is cold. You curl inward. Your toes search for warmth that isn't there. The darkness is total. There's no glow from a city, no hum from machines. Just blackness and quiet. You think for a moment. About tomorrow. About work. About rain. You try not to
About
worry
whether
about
the thatch will
illness,
hold.
or wolves, or the strange ache in your side that's been growing for weeks, because there's nothing to be done. You pray, not loudly, just a few words, mumbled under your breath, for protection, for health, for survival. Maybe you're religious. Maybe you just hope someone's listening. The fire dies down. You hear it shift, a final pop, then silence. You close your eyes. You feel the weight of the blanket, the scratch of straw, the press of another body nearby. It's not comfortable. It never is. But it's familiar. And that's enough. You drift in and out. A mouse scurries near the wall. The wind picks up. Something creaks. You don't open your eyes. This is medieval life. One day at a time. Cold. Hard. Slow. And short. But it's yours. And for now, you're still in it. You exhale. You shift slightly. And finally, your body gives in. The pain fades. The thoughts quiet. And you sleep. Because tomorrow, it all begins again. But not yet. Not now. Now, there's nothing. Just darkness. And the sound of breathing. And the stillness of a world that's always moving. Good night. If you enjoyed this history-based sleep story, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Your support is appreciated.